Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio.
Happy Friday. I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
And I'm Holly Fry.
I'm hoping that at this moment, I have safely returned home from a successful trip to see the total solar eclipse. A bunch of us, as we're recording this, we're going to go to Texas. By the time it comes out, we will have gone to Texas and come back. We selected a place in the path of totality that seemed like it had a better chance of not having cloud cover than like the parts of New England that the path of totality is going to go through, which would have been much closer. And also places that we felt like we could get to in a reasonable way to do this. Last time, total solar eclipse, same essentially group of people. We went to Columbia, Missouri, and it was great. And we did have a little bit of cloud cover that was making us nervous, but the clouds cleared over the sun just in time for totality to happen. And this is why I don't really get behind the criticisms of the people who were like, well, this 585 BCE eclipse would have been so late in the day. Probably they wouldn't have even noticed that the eclipse happened. I think they would have noticed. Because the total solar eclipse did not feel like a cloud covering up the sun.
No, I have another thought, but keep going.
Yeah, okay. The comparison between the eclipsed sun and not eclipsed sun was a lot more dramatic than like a cloud blew in, even a big cloud blew in or a storm blew in. It became really eerily quiet. And then nighttime animals started making nighttime noises. It was really just like a profound experience.
This is fascinating to me.
Yeah?
I don't get moved by them like that.
Well,
I have gone and traveled. Oh, yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, neat.
Yeah.
And it's neat, but that's like, then I'm ready to rock and roll.
It's time to go.
But I love that people get so excited about it. It's just sort of those things where I'm like, cool, because I love astronomy and stuff. You would think I would be like, you guys, everybody shut up. This is really important. But
Well, it's not a sculpture.
It's not a piece of art. Vichy Lebrun did not touch it.
So yeah, I don't know. And I also, I do, especially in the wintertime, in the wintertime, a lot of times I will try to hike at the warmest point of the day, which a lot of times is going to be in the late afternoon. So a lot of times I am returning home from hiking as the sun is setting. And I still think, I still think that would have been something that would have been noticeable. So I just me personally, I don't really agree with the argument that probably the armies would not have noticed an eclipse if it was starting late in the day towards sunset.
Now, this is where my other thought comes in.
Okay.
Because I hear you. It is a dramatic, visual thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not fighting hand-to-hand combat when you're seeing them.
I guess that's also true.
That's the mitigator for me is if I were engaged in combat, I would be like, cool, it's dark. I don't have time to look at that. I might die. But I don't know enough about how their flavor of combat played out to know how much of that really was what I'm envisioning.
Yeah.
Largely from film and occasional woodcuts versus if they were just sitting around waiting for the next maneuver.
Right.
I don't know. That would be the shifter in that one. But I don't know, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and then there's also the argument of there probably wasn't an eclipse. Some of the papers that I read doing research for this were very strident. They were like, the eclipse is a fiction.
No eclipse. No eclipse.
Yeah.
I have more questions, but they're kind of personal in nature and you might not want to answer them on the show.
Well, we can cut them out if...
Okay. Because this is pure curiosity. I have been peppering poor Tracy with questions today for, I don't know if I'm just super tired, so I've become a toddler and I have a million questions. Okay. When you say an eclipse for you is a very profound experience, profound in what way? Like, what is your takeaway? Do you feel differently about the world or the cosmos in your place in it? Or is it profound just in like the starkness of its difference from day-to-day life?
So I will confess that when I was in maybe third grade, there was a total annular eclipse that crossed North Carolina right where we lived in the path of totality. And if I'm remembering this correctly, this happened during the school day. We all went outside and watched it with little pinhole cameras made of index cards. I also remember another solar eclipse that I feel like was maybe a partial solar eclipse that we did something similar in the yard at home because it was not a school day. Neither of those when I was a child really struck me as anything impressive at all. And I was like, I don't know why you're out here making me look at these things through index cards. It's a shadow. Like, why are
I could be playing.
Yeah. So then this one that was in 2017, which a group of us went to Columbia, Missouri together. I was sort of like, this just seems like a cool thing to do. At that point, I had not seen an actual total solar eclipse within the path of totality. And I had just seen this total annular eclipse before, which that makes like a ring around. There's still a ring of sun visible. And so I kind of went sort of like feeling like it would be a fun thing to do and interesting. And we went out to this, it was sort of a wildlife preservation area. And it was a whole group of us together. The people that I was with were all people who were very interested in what we were doing. One person, background in a related field.
Gotcha.
So like to this person personally, I think would have been particularly affected. So some of it was witnessing all the things that happened when the sun disappeared.
Right.
Because we had picked a point. We were close to the longest duration of the totality.
Right.
So there was enough time in the state of totality that like interesting things happened around us involving how the animals behaved to what we were doing. And then part of it was also like how much it struck other people that I was with. So I sort of by osmosis.
Right, you're part of the group dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also there's just the part of like witnessing this thing where the fact that we have eclipses at all only happens because of the position of the moon and the earth and our relation to the sun.
Right.
And if that alignment was not what it is, we would not have them. So yeah, it was a lot of stuff together.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just feels momentous.
Yeah. I will also just have a note that I did try to find good pronunciation guidance for this episode. And boy, like some things I found Greek pronunciations for. Don't actually know whether the Greek pronunciation now would be remotely like
right
the Greek pronunciation then. And also they were names of people that weren't necessarily in Greek to start with. And then similarly, sometimes there are Latin pronunciations. That's maybe totally different. And then you'll have English pronunciations. And then sometimes just no pronunciations by anyone reputable seeming to say anything about any of this. So like we did try, but I'm not going to say that anything that we did would pass some kind of scrutiny by, say, a person whose, say, entire PhD is about, you know, this region of the world in the 6th century BCE.
Right. Well, I mean, we have talked about pronunciation so many times, and it also comes down to, I bet during the 6th century BCE, not everybody said it the same way.
Yeah. We have, we've gotten some pronunciation corrections recently from things where I'm like, I'm not sure what you were trying to tell me, because there are 2 at least pronunciations for the thing that you are rhyming it with, and I don't know which
you are
You
working
mean.
with. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time. It's
Yeah.
there's a fun thing I've probably mentioned before for my Star Wars dorks, but Dave Filoni, who is, I forget his exact title, but he's, the grand poobah of Star Wars creativity at this point. But he started doing a thing that I found really fascinating and kind of cool, which is that, like, if he's being interviewed and a thing comes up that people have pronounced differently in Star Wars at various times, in the course of the interview, he'll use both pronunciations.
Oh, I love this.
Because he's like, they're both valid, and I like, that's fine. We all know what we're talking about. And I was like, oh, this is very genius.
Yeah. 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 Some of the things we hear from folks about are sort of equivalent to like the word water. Most of us in the US say it sort of similarly to water.
Right.
Which has a D in it and not a T, which is not how it's spelled. But then there's like variations on just that. Like there are people that say it more like water.
Yes.
Well, I can't even do it. So yeah, there's so much difference in accents and how people's mouths work.
I will once again invoke the great Facebook crayon war.
Oh, people got so mad.
Which we had to, that word came up on a recent episode and it was on me and I was like, oh gosh, I hope this doesn't happen again. I know everybody says it differently. I say it crayon.
My spouse says it closer to crayon, which is the pronunciation people got the most angry about when they were fighting about the pronunciation of crayon on our Facebook. This is so long ago, but was so dramatic, we both still remember it.
It was really dramatic. I was just like, because we had done one on the history of Crayola crayons, and I certainly didn't know what an incendiary topic
well, I think the only thing that's happened recently that even compares to that is the fight people had about whether The Velveteen Rabbit is an appropriate book for children and whether you should interpret it in a way that is happy or sad. And people got verbally violent about it.
People feel ways about things.
They sure do.
They sure do. That's what's up. I always go the hippie route of like, both points are valid.
Yes.
We can all say it however we want because 9 times out of 10 in context is perfectly clear what you're talking about.
Did you understand what the person meant? Then mission accomplished.
I also just love the variance of audio musicality of people saying things different ways.
Oh, me too.
I think it's beautiful often when I'm like, oh, that's how you say that. That sounds pretty and different than the way I say it. Or like, ooh, that sounds really forceful and different than the way I've ever heard it. I love those.
Yeah.
But not everybody does.
No, I follow a bunch of thru hikers on TikTok because while I do not think I will ever thru hike anything difficult myself, I do like to watch other people doing it. And the different ways the people will say the thing I say as the Appalachian Trail. And sometimes
fighting words.
Sometimes there will be people that talk about how they're on day 14. And a lot of them I've noticed just start saying the AT so that they won't have to deal with it. But like, no matter how anybody says it, there will be a bunch of people in the comments being ugly about it. And I'm like, this person is walking. Do you understand how far they are going to walk? What if this was not what we were focused on?
I feel like we're getting now into the shades of like, why do people have to yell at each other on the internet? But like my variation on this recently is not about pronunciation, but about various cooking accounts and like the refusal to acknowledge that people have different tastes.
Oh, and different ways of preparing things.
Right. And it'll be like, listen, if you ever just are bored and need entertainment and like your television's broken, go to the New York Times cooking posts and watch people yell at each other under them. Because it's literally like, it's not even like, ooh, I didn't like this. It's like, I made this and it was garbage and I hate you and I'm not subscribing. Like, it literally escalates to this like wild level in seconds. And then, if someone goes, I made this and I actually thought it was pretty good, there's a herd of people who want to tell them that they clearly have the palate of like a badger and they shouldn't be allowed in a kitchen. And like, it's never just like, oh, that doesn't work for me. It's always like, and you are a monster.
And you're bad. Yeah.
You probably cook with crayons. I don't.
This is one of the ways that I feel really conflicted about like where we are and the ability to communicate with each other, because I think the internet and social media have made it possible for people who did not have a community before to find a community.
Yeah.
But it's also made it so much easier to just be ugly. And ugliness is such a big part of like the internet culture at this point. And I don't love it. I'm like, hey, what if we all remembered? We're all on the same planet with the same sun and the same moon. We're all here together.
We're all trapped on one rock, hurtling through space. Be cool.
And that's where we'll end this half.
We talked about Milton Bradley and the checkered game of life this week.
Yep.
There have been so many versions of this game, even in the modern versions, where I'm like, yikes.
Yeah.
There was on some of the original versions, there was a square you could land on that kind of encouraged things like playing the stock market and speculation.
Mm-hmm.
That got taken off. And even in the modern ones, I remember, and then I thought I may have misremembered and been experiencing a cerebral event. Something that I then went and looked at ads, and it was in the ads, which is that you used to get sent to a poor farm, which just is sucky. That's, I don't know. The whole thing is sucky. The newer versions of Life are a trip because like you don't get cash. You used to I remember Life being one of those games like Monopoly where you would get lots of paper involved.
Mm-hmm.
And now the newer ones have, you get like a debit card essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I think they even have a partnership with Visa.
Yeah.
And it's like they always say that it is about teaching kids financial responsibility. But it's also like, I don't know. The whole thing is weird anymore. I feel strange about it.
I don't think we played a lot of the game of Life. I mean, I have played it before, but I feel like it was a game that like somebody who babysat us at or something. Like, I don't think it was a game we had at home.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder too, because like the game of Life historically, as we grew up playing it, was very gendered, right? Mm-hmm. You had a car that was either pink or blue if you were a boy or a girl. And you had little pegs that represented you and the other people in your family that were all either pink or blue for the same reasons. And I'm like, that's not really today I mean, are there other colors? I haven't investigated.
I have no idea.
But I also, I did love the ad campaigns for the game of Life because they're preposterously funny, right? It's like a 10-year-old going, I had twins, and just like a lot of...
Oh, yeah. I also just have the Get Lucky with the Game of Life jingle in my head on repeat the whole time we've been recording this.
Oh, yeah. Mine is, you can be a winner at the Game of Life.
Oh, I forgot that one.
I love that one. That was my favorite, even though the actual ad is probably one of my less favorites in terms of how it plays out. But it's very funny. I will say this, though, which makes me sound like I was a ruthless child, and I was in some ways, because I did not want to play the Game of Life.
Okay.
I was a Monopoly kid because I wanted to destroy all. I was that monster child that wanted to build up every one of my properties to the point where like Dubai would look on with envy. And then I wanted to charge people. I remember charging somebody who did not have the money to pay me when they landed on my square. I was like, you can keep playing. I'm not going to bankrupt you, but you will be racking up interest. What a monstrous kid.
So in my memory, my paternal grandmother had 2 board games at her house when my brother, cousin, and I were of the age to play them. And those were Battleship and Monopoly. And my cousin and I would gang up on my brother.
Oh yeah, alliances, man.
And upset him so much. Sorry, Matt. I'm very sorry that Rad and I were so bad to you playing Monopoly as children. I feel like that's always how it went. It was always me and my cousin ganging up on my brother, and then my grandmother would be like, "Yeah, I'll be nice."
But that's not how that works. Those don't foster niceness.
No. Well, and that whole game has its own story of it being a game originally that was about the grossness of capitalism that then became a game that celebrates capitalism. That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
That there's lots of other work out there on.
That article from the New Yorker that Jill Lepore wrote, who is a history professor, made an interesting point that I hadn't considered about the game of life, which is that the way you're competing with other players is not in a way that directly impacts them. You're on your own journey, and you're just trying to get through your stuff fastest. Unlike something like Monopoly, where it is a little more ruthless and like you're trying to take down other people. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing I had not thought about. Yeah. Although, of course, in the actual game of real world life, if your only goal is to acquire wealth, you are probably going to take down other people. That's a different matter.
And there are also a number of awesome board games that are cooperative and everyone playing is working together to achieve a goal.
Yes. Yeah. That's I feel like that is how I like to play video games now.
Yeah.
Like I don't love the games where you just drop in and get, destroyed by somebody randomly.
Right.
I really like the ones for a while when the first version of Battlefront 2 is out. I'm almost reluctant to bring up Battlefront because it's going through a little rough moment right now. But they used to have a setting that was called Play All Maps. And basically, Brian and I would make sure we were on the same team. We would hit Play All Maps, and we would spend like 4 hours just running around the Star Wars universe together, trying to shoot droids, which was a very good date night for us.
Yeah.
And I would like to do those again. But yeah, I don't so much want to fight with my friends in games the way I did when I was a kid.
No.
I've gotten to be such a hippie as an adult. I'm like, everybody be kind. Let's all. Who can adopt the most cats? That'll be my board game I decide.
Yeah. So there's a game, I think it's called the Tea Dragon Society. I'm doing this from memory and it's been a while since I've played, but it is a game. You have these little dragons and tea. It is a card game. And I was playing it with some friends. And 3 of us were interested in having a good time with these adorable dragons and their tea and flowers and etc. And friend number 4 sort of created an engine. Like he was actually playing the game, like playing it to win. He created an engine with the cards so that every turn he got all of the stuff. And we were just like, we do not have the same goal for our little game. This is
not the same game for all of us. Yeah.
No. So anyway.
I don't do many board games these days. Not for lack of interest. It's just hard to like find a time when people I would want to play with can all be in the same place.
Right.
We're all a little probably silly levels of busy, but maybe that will be a mid-year resolution for me. I'll add in.
Yeah.
Games.
I do play some board games. We've gotten requests for a history of board games episode.
That's like going, can I get a history of the sun?
Yeah. And
it's big.
This is maybe going to be ironic since I just wrote 6 impossible episodes on etiquette manuals, which was like admittedly from the beginning, like this is a very Eurocentric etiquette manual thing. I feel like it would be a huge disservice to that topic to have it be really Eurocentric. And I also don't feel like it's possible to be more global with it and have it fit into an episode because there's so much. So like that is something that I've thought about, and that's where I landed on it.
Yeah, it's tricky. I hope if this is your weekend coming up that you get to maybe play a game with somebody that you like playing with and that has similar objectives and approaches to those games to you. If it's not your time off coming up, we hope that you still get to have a good time and maybe play a game. Sometimes I can fit a game in on a weeknight. If you are trucking along through life and getting relaxation and being kind, we hope you reach happy old age. We will be right back here again tomorrow with a classic, and then on Monday there will be another brand new episode.
Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.